Hi, Amanda.
Hi,
Welcome
happy
to,
Friday.
it is now episode 4 of the Connected Approach podcast. So
We're
good to be
getting
with
better at this, right?
you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. For today, what's on your mind as it relates to the leader approach?
Um, there's a lot on my mind. Actually, you and I don't really like talk a lot about this stuff before our time together on the podcast, but I was thinking this morning, as I was just kind of going through my morning ritual of um, how important it is when we talk about the components and the different attributes when it comes to leading self. So it has me actually thinking about, I always go into this time in the fall where it's like changing of the seasons and you're closing off summer and, summer's always crazy. But then fall, like I get into this mode of there's 4 months left of the year. And like, how am I going to really, optimize that time and think about how I want to just be in that time and, end the year and roll into next year in a really good state of flow. And inevitably during summer, you just get so caught up in whatever the summer plans are that you get out of some of these habits and rituals that are so important to um, allowing you to be at your best. And so the more that you and I talk about how we're, framing and the components of the leader approach and the first one being leading self, as I was getting back to doing my yoga this morning, it was like, man, I need this because I need to get back into that rhythm with those um, morning rituals, but then just being really intentional every day about what I want to, how I want to show up and how I want to feel at the end of the day when I put my head on the pillow. So, yeah, it's been good for me. That's what I'm thinking about. How about you?
Well, it's interesting, you sharing what you've been thinking about. It brings me to that word intentionality
Mm-hmm. Yes.
because so often we find our days waking up like a bullet and
Yeah.
off. At least I
Yeah.
feel that
I
way.
imagine that's how you pop out of bed. Where's my coffee?
And and intentionality is something that is fleeting or challenging
Yeah.
to focus on. And it might be that whenever I wake up, I feel like I'm off and running.
Yeah.
How do you set out that space for intentionality? We talk a lot about building the space. As coaches, we talk about building the container. So how do
Yeah.
you build in that intentionality to your morning rituals?
Well, I think, I mean, just off the cuff, and this is some of the stuff that we're going to continue to put kind of, into our framework, but it is about having clear expectations of what your true north is, or, what is it, how is it that you want to show up, every day. And so for me, instead of having these big goals, for the end of the year, whatever you do at the beginning of the year, it really is about daily goals, more bite size and therefore allowing you to be intentional. So one of the big measures that I have is I just said it earlier to you, like, can I put my head on the pillow and not feel like my mind's racing or I should have done this or I'm exhausted or I'm, um, any sort of negative emotion, frustrated, irritated. So if that's not what I want. And what I want is to be at peace, with how I spent my day. Then I have to think about planning out my days or my week so that I know these are the things that will give me energy and these are the things that will zap me. So how do I kind of plan my week or day? So it does require me to, look at my days. My maybe on Fridays. A lot of times on Fridays, I'll look at my day or my week, for next week, and make sure, like, okay, do I have a pocket of time that I can get in some strength training? How does every morning look? Like, what are the mornings that I will be able to, do whatever? And then also making sure that I'm doing things that are important to me, like challenging my thinking and around intellectual growth and a lot of the stuff that you and I have been talking about, this week as we're just like working together on our business. So, um, what do you think when you think about intentionality?
Well, it's interesting just listening to you, thinking about your intentions. It's interesting, right? When you're doing something with intention, you're doing it on purpose. And I know that's a big
Yeah,
word. We talk about, purpose being so central to how we're trying to be. And we talk
yeah,
about that too, right? Not what you do, but, the chief being officer. I
yeah,
know you've titled yourself that chief
yeah,
being officer for a connected approach, but, and that's super cool. And is there, thinking about intentionality, thinking about on purpose, is there a particular process you follow to ensure that you're intentional in certain ways in leading self? You and I have been
yeah,
talking about the subcategories of leading self and whether we have the
yeah,
right exact words right now that we're going to share as we move forward. We know that there's a mental aspect, that there's an
right,
emotional aspect, a physical aspect,
yeah,
intellectual aspect, a social aspect. Is that built into your intentionality, or is that something we're talking about building now?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely. And it starts with, first, you said purpose, right? I think there are some exercises that you have to really go through to first be able to be clear on what it is that you're wanting. So be clear about your what your true north is. Be clear about what your values are. Be clear on what matters most to you. Um, all of those act as your anchor, because if you don't have something you're like shooting for, like something that you're striving for, that says like, this, I'm falling, I'm kind of going out into sea. I need to anchor back into what I've said is most important to me. So that's kind of some of the work first, to get really clear on what is your true north. For me, it's again not something, I want to be whatever. It is that I want to have days filled with joy where I am present and I am being my most authentic self. So then what does that mean? It means that I want to go to bed without having stress and, frustration and those kind of things. I want to be able to have strong mind, so my thoughts and emotions aren't taking me over where I can't be present. Um, and so a lot of it does have to do with exactly what we're talking about. So first getting that nailed down as to like what your true north is and what your values are, because your values help you in decision making and, everything. And then it gets to the practices that we've been talking about where it's really about, conquering your mind, the thoughts, the emotion, the feelings, the physical side of things. Are you setting yourself up to be more of a, someone with Jedi strength, and watching what you're doing for um, health wise, and then just getting curious every day. What are you doing around that intellectual growth, and really trying to stretch your thinking and broaden your perspective on things. And there absolutely is a social connection, which I think we're all starved of right now with what we've been going through. So I think first, though, you have to kind of create that anchor and stickiness before then you get into then how you're the intentional parts of what you're going to set for yourself that become your rituals and your habits.
It's reminding me, we're talking about true north, we're talking about
Mhm.
purpose. And this has been a real journey for me, working on what's my purpose. And I think one thing that we share is the concept that as our authentic selves, from probably way back longer than we can remember, to our families and then growing up, etc., we were people that were relied upon, or we at least felt relied
Yeah,
upon, to help others achieve their full potential. And that's the work we're doing now. It's people,
right.
and it's organizations, and that's that's a heavy that's a
Yeah,
heavy purpose. And and it and I'm sure to those listening and those watching us, it sounds like almost something that might be out of reach in terms of taking that on for our clients as
right.
individuals, as organizations. And yet through the journey that I've been on to discover that purpose and clarify that purpose, it's actually been very freeing. And
Yes.
I think it goes so much to your point that when you're clear on that,
Yeah.
there's just like this filter, this sieve that you're able to say, oh, these things don't get through. And I know you and I talked recently about some extra engagements that we have. We're
Right.
serving different communities with different boards, and we're involved in different things. And looking at that through the lens of that purpose, it becomes immediately clear. Is
Yeah.
this or is this not advancing that purpose of helping people achieve their highest potential, and organizations achieve their highest potential
Right.
across the, and when it's no, it's a very easy answer. Um, we have a client right now that is going off with a very exciting endeavor, and
Yeah.
there's a full process to that endeavor. And I care about this client so much. There was a part of me that, as I reached out to congratulate him, I was like, oh, maybe I can help him with some elements of this as he prepares for this new role. But
Yeah.
those elements that I was thinking about, that are very, very formal, it's not part of my purpose. It's not therefore in
Yeah.
my wheelhouse. And I could
Right.
totally, go against the grain and grit my teeth and find some way to help him in that regard. But it's outside our lane. There are things,
Exactly.
helping him introduce himself to the new organization, helping him build the team as he arrives in the new organization, helping him get clarity on
Right.
his purpose for and vision for the organization, and sharing that with the best amount of intentionality and excitement to the organization. That's what we do. But when I
Exactly.
think about the other things, it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just
When
not.
you,
It's easy to step around that. Whereas without that purpose, at the forefront,
yeah.
you can go all the way down another tributary and get off the river.
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, it does provide you with this compass, this kind of life map, whatever you want to call it, because if all of a sudden you're spending your time on something and you're kind of like, it becomes just more difficult. You can then, put it against this framework that you've developed for yourself, your true north, or more so your values and where you want to be spending your time. And you can say, is it uncomfortable, or am I feeling this way just because it's growth, because growth is uncomfortable? Or is it, am I just feeling this way because it's just like, it's not really aligned to where I've said I want to be focusing my time, and time is valuable, so you have to be super intentional, and super purposeful, because I think that's how we as individuals all of a sudden find ourselves like, oh, how did I get here? It's because I wasn't intentional about this move that went to this move that went to this move, and then all of a sudden you're kind of like lost.
Mm.
And so you have to, that's why I kind of like, I mean, it's just the changing of the seasons. That is the time for me, fall or winter or spring. I live in the Midwest, so it's like, very distinct changing of seasons. And that's kind of my trigger to say it's time to kind of reevaluate where I'm at, and put things back in place that maybe slipped a little bit, because I just, with life, it's not like you're going to be perfect every day. This is not about being perfect, but it's having those things in place that, kind of always bring you back to, what you're wanting to be in life.
One other thing, in addition to leading self and the elements of leading self that we've been talking about and really studying and pursuing, and I know that this is a big
Right.
part of your work as a coach and a leader, is positive intelligence. And so there's the
Yeah.
positive intelligence movement and the positive intelligence program. And I'm in the midst of that program now, and really enjoying the experience and the challenge of
Right.
moving from, being subject to those things that sabotage us every day, our inner judge, the other saboteurs that are
Right.
well documented in positive intelligence. And we'll be able to put a link to positive intelligence and the famous TED Talk in the notes for this episode.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I have gone in 1 week from a skeptic to a believer.
I have
With,
really noticed that. That's awesome.
and so I'll give you
I
an
knew you
example,
would, Chris. It just like takes time. And I was the same way. I'm like, what is this?
and I'll give you an example. So this week I had an important business meeting, and it was
Yeah.
with an important friend of mine who leads a dynamic organization. And one thing that I wanted to surprise her with was a pastry that she and I used to enjoy together when we worked together. And so I show up at the pastry shop, which I'm just so excited. I sort of pre-ordered my pastry. It happens to be a morning scone. And I show up, and sure enough, they say, "You're all set. Here are your scones." And they hand me a bag of scones. And so I say, "Thank you." I'm, of course, off to the next thing. And I get in the car, and I get about 2 miles down the road. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, they're in a bag. I'm about to meet with someone who's just like one of my heroes and someone that is so wonderful in my life. And I'm not bringing it like in this beautiful box. Why didn't you ask for the box? There was a box right behind the barista. Why didn't you say, "I need a box? Get me the box"? So I spend about
And
15.
let me guess, one of your top saboteurs is stickler.
Ding, 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 ding. So my perfectionist, my stickler is ringing, and my judge. What are you
Yeah.
doing? How are you gonna? So of course I'm sort of like now manufacturing how I'm gonna go in there with a bag of scones as opposed to a
Mhm.
beautiful box of scones. So I keep driving, and
Yeah.
about 30 minutes later, I arrive outside the gates to where I have to go, and I'm sort of taking a few minutes to just collect myself. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to sort of sit in the parking lot. You have all these things you're thinking about, right? I'll kind of be cool. And
Do I
it
go
goes
in now? Do I go in a little like, what time?
right. I didn't want it to be where like I'm outside my car, my coat tail is stuck in the closed door, and I'm now pulling it in front of everyone. So
Yeah.
about 2 minutes before I have to go in, it goes from drizzling to absolutely torrential downpour, absolute torrential downpour. And of course,
And
now
let
it's
me
going
guess, you were worried about your hair.
to. First, I was worried about my perm. That was the first thing I was worried about. The second, no, I was worried about my hair. And so I say to myself, wait a minute, what's positive intelligence telling me to do? This is good. This torrential downpour is good. And not in some, toxically positive way, which of course,
Yeah,
when you
right,
go into something like positive intelligence, like, oh, maybe it's just this shiny, happy people thing. And I thought, wait a minute. Now, because I had an umbrella,
right,
now I can put the bag in my shoulder bag, my kind of my briefcase that I brought, and it will fit. Now, if I had a box, it would not have fit, and there would have been soggy
right,
scones. But and as silly as that whole thing is, those 2 minutes from outside the gates to inside the gates, where I discovered this, it was like, this is good. Not just I'll make good out of it, but
right.
this is actually the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah,
This rain, this thing, nature,
yeah,
instead of like, oh, I'll find some good in it, but no, no, no,
yeah,
leaning into like this is actually the best.
right,
It was remarkable to be able to experience that, and once again, not just I'll make it good, but this is the best that could happen
right.
this
You
meeting.
you change the circumstance from being hijacked, and then possibly even being hijacked through your entire meeting because of like the situation, and you caught it and you flipped it, right, and then it was just like and moved through it. It's like
Dry,
that's Jedi like
delicious.
sage.
And as silly as that sounds, like it's brought me closer to appreciating this journey of positive intelligence and how
Yeah,
important it is for ourselves
yeah.
as we lead self, and also as we lead others in the circumstances. So just wanted to share that
I
scone
love it. I love it.
through.
It is. I mean, so much of coaching and leadership is about first just self awareness. I mean, just not getting. We're just. It's really sad to me how many individuals just go through the world just kind of like just kind of being consumed by the circumstances versus really flipping that and saying, how is it that I want to be? How is it that I want to experience life? And then taking some time, which is, I think, is the absolute most important time that you can spend, is to say, like, what matters most to me? What is of the most important, thing that I can be doing that gives me joy, or whatever it is. And and then just like tuning in and paying attention and understanding that self-awareness is really the biggest thing that you practice, that you have to work on, is just being aware and then catching it. And then we walk through a lot of different practices, that are simple practices, but it's just things to make sure that you're exercising your mind, your thoughts, your emotions, and just changing those, and believing in the fact that you can change how you think and how you behave. It's not like, oh, I'm just old and this is just how I am.
Well, it's reminding me of a very famous commencement speech for Kenyon College from David Foster Wallace,
Yeah,
probably 15 years ago now. This is water. And it talks about he's talking about the value of a liberal arts education. And interestingly, there are many parallels. We can also put, a link to that speech in the show notes, but he's talking about the value of choice, the
yeah,
value of the liberal arts education as a means to recognizing you have a choice. And
yeah,
at one point in the speech, he says, when you're in line at the end of the day at the supermarket and you're 10 people deep and you're already counting, who you only have one or two things you're picking up for dinner. and you're trying to go through the quick checkout, and you're already counting the fact that the people in front of you have 15 items instead of 12 items or less, or that they're taking too long and they're not ready. Whatever it is, he says, you can choose to think like that, or you can choose to think about different things while you're waiting there. Now, it's not exactly positive intelligence, but he's saying that's what education is knowing you have the choice
Yeah.
of what that narrative will be and what you're going to think about and focus on. And I've been thinking about that through positive intelligence as
It is,
well.
yeah, it very much is positive intelligence, right? Because for me, I mean, my top saboteur is stickler as well, perfectionism, so it's like it is it is this voice that comes up like I could have been home in record time, 12 minutes. But now, because these other people chose to, be here at the same time, because I was like, thinking like in the most perfect circumstances, like I zoom through the grocery store. There's no one in front of me. I have the fastest checkout lady, and I'm, home, right? So it's saying like, well, like why, just be, don't be a victim of the circumstances. So it is a lot about choice and choosing how we want to, do we want to allow our mind, those thoughts to just take us in on a path that is, that really is no good for us. It doesn't help us like be better in any way. So do whatever you need to do. Do your breathing exercises during that time, get in a place where you're just like calm, which
Right.
is the exercise. Is that is the whole like kind of behavior change with positive intelligence.
And I think as we continue to go forward and talk both with each other, but also with folks that will be joining us, I think it will be so valuable to understand their perspectives on things like this.
Yeah.
As coaches, we're sort of professional question askers, right?
Yeah.
I guess interviewer is probably better, but question asker. But it is about, right? We focus so much on the perfect, succinct question. And I think to understand and well, first ask and understand what other people's perspectives are on this. I'm forever surprised across different walks of life how many people do think about these things, the
Yeah.
choices they make and how they think and how they
Yeah.
consider circumstances. So that will be certainly part of the fun that we're going to continue to have with this
Hmm.
podcast and the folks that we engage,
Yeah.
because we'll ask that one question and we're going to let them share with us, and it will provide so much light to this subject that will, I think, be even more rich for for
Yeah.
our dialogue. So,
I agree. I agree. Very cool.
thank you for today's episode, Amanda. This was really great. Every time we say to
I know.
ourselves, but I think talking about leading self and those components, intentionality,
Yeah.
positive intelligence, and the choices that we make that are aligned with our purpose, that's really cool stuff. And we're letting people into kind of exactly what we're talking about and working on
Yeah.
every day. And it's
Yeah.
just so
It's great. We never have a dull moment of, what are we going to talk about today, Chris? I've gone from like I've stopped saying the words like let's just wing it, because even these things I know that they're going to be, or these conversations are very intentional, but I just know that I'm just going to allow myself to get into flow, and whatever topic comes up, it's the topic for us to talk about that day.
well, how's this? Next time we will make it scripted and it will be like, hello, good friend. How are you? We can read them off to each other. Okay. Thanks, Amanda.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
See you next time.
Yes. Bye bye.